All right, everybody, welcome to CyberBulls. It's a very special episode. We have Sawyer Merritt joining us, but also because a lot of good things are happening for Tesla. It looks like that the boom market is here. We'll share with you information about that. Model 3 Highland is on its way and lots of news about GigaIndia. So welcome to the CyberBulls. We've got Alexandra Mertz, quite the regular and apparently the most favorite bull of all of us. And then there's Jeff Lutz. Everybody's wearing sunglasses. I'm going to put mine on as well because we're honoring Sawyer Merritt. In the Tesla community, we think that he is the absolute biggest star and deserves it. He is known as Mr. Breaking News. And literally for 4 years, he's the person that's been the provider of all the great news for us. Thank you, Sawyer, for joining us on the Bulls today.
Thanks for having me. That was a very kind intro.
You have to also tell him that he has his great T-shirt line. Please, please, please.
We're going to dive into his business twin Birch. I don't know if people know, but Sawyer actually has a twin, and they started a brand new sustainable clothing line. We'll talk to him about that. But there's now 2x creator revenue, and he's going to share all of his numbers. He promised he'll be very transparent how much money he's making. So. Welcome, everybody. So let's get started with the first topic here, which is we're going to cover Tesla's stock. And is there a margin? Is it finally stabilized, Tesla's margin and pricing cuts? The Model 3 Highland looks like that they have a date. Is it August 14th? Sawyer would know. Both Sawyer and Alexandra were tweeting back and forth with Gary Black, who seems to think that Tesla should buy Uber. I can't believe I even just said that. And then there's lots of news about GigaIndia. So let's start with margin. Let's start with you, Sawyer. Tell me, what do you think about what's going to happen to Tesla stock prices of the cars?
Yeah, speaking of Gary, I tend to agree with him actually that we are probably at the bottom of the margin in terms of, Elon did reference, depending on what rates do over the coming months, there could be some adjustment in the car's pricing. But I think in general, we're seeing sort of a bottoming probably last quarter, maybe this quarter. And I don't expect too much margin pressure going forward from here. I think the numbers were pretty good in Q2. I think there were some people that were predicting like 15%, which I thought was way too low. But I think as Austin and Giga Berlin start to ramp up even more, of course, we have the CyberTruck coming. That'll put a damper overall on generalized margins. But I think the margins will be fine for the rest of the year and into next year.
Okay, what about you, Alexandra?
Yeah, like I said last week, I do believe there's still some couple of price cuts coming. They'll still have inventory of the traditional Model 3. They will be cut. They're probably playing it now day by day, seeing how sales go. The good thing with Tesla's model is they really have the finger on the pulse and can adjust. I think quarter 3 margins may still be under stress. I don't think we're through that yet. Just because of the factories closing for a couple of weeks, the launch of the new models, the time it takes to get those models to the different countries. So I'm not expecting a famous third quarter, and margins could be the reason for that. But then by Q4, you're right. So CyberTruck, it won't be a huge production, but it will bring some pressure on the margins as well. And then the ramp up. But everybody looking forward to 2024. So this year's over.
Yeah.
So Jeff, I just interviewed Gary Black, and he said that the number one issue that institutional firms are still looking at for, why they're kind of hesitant on investing in Tesla is the concern for margins, because he said at the last earnings call, Elon just kind of still said, we'll need to cut prices if we need to, if the interest rates keep going up or something like that. That's spooked them. And then he was saying that in Q3, it's still not well understood whether or not the cost reductions is going to show up. Jeff, is cost reductions finally going to show up in Q3 so the margins will improve?
Well, I think it's going to be a little bit of a mixed story because of the inventory units that they'll ship with the factory down. Those inventory units were built in prior quarters, so you have to go off of the COGS from the prior quarters, and if there's any discounting involved, well, then that will come into play as well. But I believe that the if there is a shutdown, it's literally going to be measured in days, if not under 2 weeks. And if you look at on a quarter, there's depending if you go by the letter of the law and how it's normally done, it's about 75 days of production in a quarter that are actually realizable. Depending on where the factory is and if it's co-located, the source of supply is co-located, the customer, you could get up to 80, 85, however you cut it. Basically, Tesla is at a production run rate of, if you say on the 75-day production calendar, about 6,300 a day. And then if you go to 85 days, maybe it's 5,500. So if they're down for 10 days, let's say, they're going to use up about half of that existing inventory that they have of roughly 100,000 cars. That's a good thing. It gets that working capital off the books. But again, that was built in prior quarters. So I don't think margins operate in kind of a V recovery type fashion. There's usually a bottoming process involved. And it's going to be a little bit harder to predict this quarter, but I believe the influx is looking forward. I believe the influx of both new components and the velocity of those new components coming in, because I think they're gearing up for a pretty big Q4, as well as the fact that I think the Model 3 refresh is going to be a car that's going to be a lower COGS car and at a lower MSRP. And I believe they're going to have good gross margins on that as well. I believe those two factors are going to help gross margins going into the end of the year in the fourth quarter. Again, I think Q3 is going to be difficult to predict. And I even thought Q2, I had a range of between 15 to 18%, and it came in at the top end of my range. So I view Q3 will be very similar. They'll get some reductions in. Obviously, I think most of what they build in Q3 will be new. But again, they'll have to burn off some of that existing inventory at the older COGS.
Okay, let's talk Model 3 Highland. So raise hands if you think that Model 3 Highland is real. Is it real, or is there some people like Warren Reddick even this morning said that it's not real? So who thinks it's real?
I don't know what he
Raise your
means by
hands.
not real. That confuses me.
Well, go ahead, Sawyer. You're the breaking news guy. Tell me what we learned recently. Didn't we hear the August 14th date? I know these are rumors from the Giga Shanghai potential employees, right?
Yeah, there's been some conflicting info over recent weeks. We sort of have seen some stoppages or slowdown in production at Fremont. Of course, Elon had alluded to there being some factory upgrades across the board, I think, in Q3. So there was expected to be some sort of shutdowns, but they didn't allude to why those upgrades would be taking place. A lot of people are speculating it is because of the refresh Model 3. I tend to think it is going to launch this quarter, but people like Omar have been hearing Q4 or even Q1 of next year. I think it's just really I don't think anyone knows for sure at this point. I certainly don't. But it sounds like it makes sense to me. I forget what count tweeted it out today, but it makes sense to me that they would sort of slowly phase out the current Model 3 and sort of slowly introduce the new Model 3 refresh, rather than just completely stopping all at once the older version and just starting with the newer. So I'm hoping it launches this quarter. It is a little interesting if it would launch this quarter at a similar time to the Cybertruck. Maybe they would want to wait a little bit longer to launch the Refresh 3 and just get the Cybertruck going. Have all hands on deck for that. But I tend to think it probably will launch this quarter, but don't know when.
Yeah, so some interesting information that came out was that if you want to buy a Model 3 in Europe right now, they pushed out the release date. So if you put an order now, the release for that particular Model 3, a rear-wheel drive, is going to be now October. And then I think the premium is going to be in January. So then the question becomes, why in Europe? Because Giga Berlin does not sell the Model 3 yet. Are they going to start selling the Model 3? What do you guys think?
No.
You mean you produced the Model 3? No, they won't. Go ahead, Sawyer.
No, I don't think it'll happen anytime soon. I think they're just going to focus on the Model Y for now. Maybe in the expansion, the Giga Berlin expansion phase 2, maybe they'll start producing the 3 there. But no, I think it's fully focused on Model Y for now. And that is suspicious, though, that pushback in dates. I know Troy Teslak was sort of alluding to maybe it was because of demand or whatever, but I tried to provide some context last night and be like, no, I think most people think this is probably because the Model 3 refresh is coming rather than.
And you were much more patient than me. I was furious last night. This is the second time that at the beginning of the quarter he alludes on circumstances that are his speculation but presents them as fact. So I unsubscribed from his Patreon and let him know. I mean, I don't want to be childish in this whole thing, but I've just enough discussion on this whole thing. Troy is very good at accumulating data, and I think he's very good the last 2-3 weeks of a quarter. But at the beginning of each quarter, he feels, I don't know what necessity to sprinkle in some theories that are always negative, always, and I mean, it's crazy. Either it's too much delay or too little delay. There's never anything positive to it. And so last night I had it.
Yeah, sometimes I wish he would provide some further context, because I feel like sometimes that's missing, and some people think that a story is negative when really, if he just provides all the different, potential factors that may be the reason for why it's happening, it would be helpful.
Yeah, so I actually am hopeful that Giga Berlin will start producing the revised Model 3. So I'm shocked. I'm a little shocked that both of you said no. So
no, they don't have a line
they
for
are that. So in Giga Berlin, they're actually not shutting down and slowing down production lines. They're adding new production lines. And so the reason I say this is that, I'm of the belief that the Model 3 was supposed to be the $35,000 best-selling vehicle in the world when it was first created. Then they were able to do giga castings and structural batteries, and they were able to make a beautiful improvement in how they're building the Model Y, to the point that they lowered the price of Model Y so that it's so close to the Model 3. Therefore, Model Y became best-selling, and Model 3 became pretty good selling, but nothing significant. With this refresh, it's going to take the Model 3 into a brand new sedan segmentation, which, by the way, is the second largest share of different types of cars globally. And then they're going to make it sportier, and they're going to lower the price. So it's going to have its own space, and it's going to just shoot up in terms of sales. And so why wouldn't they, in Europe, while we're waiting for the compact car, sell a sedan, which is one of the top market shares in Europe, is a sedan?
Well, because in Europe, they're like me, like they're tall and they need a car in which they can get into, and they need a small car that has a hatchback. They need a small car where they can put the kids in and the shopping in and whatever. So in Europe, as in Asia, the next gen car is the highest priority. And I do believe the whole extension of the permits they're currently asking in Berlin is all dedicated to the next generation car. I don't believe Berlin will ever produce the Model 3 there.
I say no. The next gen car will have to be built with the
the
unboxed model. It has to be the unboxed model. And so it needs to be a net new factory to build it, not just a new production line.
I do agree with you, Herbert, that the Giga castings, I think the streamlining of the interior and simplification of that will provide an opportunity for Tesla to make this car for thousands cheaper. And I tend to think that they will pass those savings on to the consumer rather than pocketing it.
But they will still be able to produce it much, much cheaper in Shanghai plus transport than doing it in Berlin. There is no way. But in Berlin, the next gen, when I say an extension, I mean really, doubling the factory space. And then in the second half, of course, you can do the next gen, and you can do all the Giga presses and everything you want. I don't see them producing Model 3s in Berlin. It's not the car for Europe. I mean, it's a great car. Don't get me right. I love the Model 3. But I do believe what will really conquer the European market is the next gen.
How many countries have you lived at, Alexandra?
I lived in obviously United States. I was born in Germany. I studied in England, in London, and then in France for 15 years. No, even more.
Is your accent strictly a German accent that's westernized, or is it a mix?
My accent is the same mess than the whole lady is. There's no way around it.
Jeff, how come you're so quiet?
He's in.
I'm just taking it all
Jeff?
in. You're talking about factories and outside of Chicago accent, maybe. Just taking it all in. On the Model 3, I mean, it's interesting. Is it possible in Berlin? Sure, but you have to look at the time value to capitalize a new factory and set it up versus the incumbent next generation product coming in. And if they're actually going to have to add new capital and then get return on that capital, prior to that new car coming in, or in some period of time, the question is would they get a better return on that capital located in Shanghai with shipping rates so very low, or and transporting cars there, or would they get a better return on it in Berlin? Tesla, they are, from a supply chain perspective, the one thing that I think that does go in your favor, Herbert, is their plan is to localize supply as much as possible, but there's kind of a cutoff point. That's why Model S and X aren't built everywhere. So you just have to look at those cutoff thresholds, and would you actually get the return? That's the key thing, is would you get the return on capital or not?
Okay.
I guess.
And then I should mention that I love you, Alexandra, because in the last earnings call, you collected every statement that Elon and Zach said about the Model 3 Highland, or the slowdown or the refreshing of the production lines in each of the Gigafactories. And you pointed out that they kind of said slight delay, not that big of a impact, right? So what is everybody expecting for production and delivery for Q3?
Let me quickly address that. So what I did is I listened to the call at slower speed. Usually I always put everything at 1.5 and I try to get it over with, but I felt there was really an advantage of getting all the stutters and how they're going back on certain subject, correct themselves, half phrases and all that. So I listened to it really slowly, the whole call again, and took notes. 8 pages of notes. I said, oh, that's not going to help anybody. So out of those 8 pages, I selected what I consider the most important one and did that tweet that Elon said it's accurate. So I consider that, I got his approval for that one. And none of those points were margin orientated. Because at the moment I did that, the whole discussion, it was the weekend after the earnings call. So from Wednesday to Friday, the whole discussion was still monopolized about margins. And I honestly believe margins, of course, Tesla will look at margins, but margins are just not the key issue at the moment in time in which we are. They're expanding so much in so many different directions that margins can't be the only subject that we're talking about. And so without me deciding that I wanted to avoid margins, the best quotes of there, the ones that I really felt were the most important one, didn't address margin at all. So I posted that on Saturday evening, and I mean, obviously it had not even a glimpse of the success that any of Sawyer's tweets has. I'm still butthurt, but there we go. But anyway, it did get Elon's reaction, and it got, I think, 300,000 views. And I'm really, pleased with it, because it sums up what happens this quarter. It's easy to read. It was 4 or 5 points, bullet points, easily understandable. And if we just can keep the focus on those, I think we're well served.
Right. I'm trying to pull it up. Okay, good. Thank you for doing that. So, Sawyer, very curious before we move on to the next topic here, like, how did you get involved with Tesla? Because I think for almost all of us, you were probably the very first person we all followed because of your breaking news. You and, of course, Omar and a couple others, but you seem to have always been there, and you look pretty young. So tell me how the story is.
Yeah, I turned 28 a few months ago. I've been tweeting, I think, a little over 3 years now, daily. And, it really is like a full-time thing. It's 24/7. I think in the last 3 years I've been doing it, I've taken a total of maybe 4 days off doing it. So it's definitely a full-time thing. And, I first got interested in Tesla around 2014, 2015. And I bought my first Tesla shares late 2015. But it was like 4 shares, I think. But I think I sold them because I wasn't confident, or I think my mom talked me out of it. I was like new to investing at that time. And then I kept following Tesla. I was listening to every earnings call back then in like 2017, 2018. And I went all in, every penny I had in mid 2018, because I just felt like this is I want to switch all my Apple and Netflix stock to this company. I love the mission. I love Elon. I just love the product. And yeah, that sort of evolved from there. And then I just started tweeting about Tesla, I think 2019, maybe a little bit.
Only 2019? That's interesting. I had the feeling you were there forever.
Well, my first ever Tesla related tweet was the Model 3 launch event in 2016. But I didn't start daily tweeting until around 2020, actually.
And how did you become the breaking news guy? Because listen, if you're watching this for the first time, and you probably know who Sawyer Merritt is, but if you don't, he's the first person you want to follow if you're interested in Tesla. On Twitter, he's at Sawyer Merritt. He is by far, there's no one closer to him. He gets the breaking news. He gets the most important news ahead of all of us. So how did you do that, and how do you keep doing that, Sawyer?
I felt like 3 or so years ago, there was a lot of great EV blogs, and they had been around for years. But I felt like most of the Tesla community was, and a lot of the fun was on Twitter, and there wasn't an account dedicated to news in a breaking news fashion and just like minute by minute stuff. Sure, I could, release a blog post on there, but I wanted to do it right on the platform itself without any paywalls, without any, ads or anything, and just keep people the best informed that I could. And I think that resonated people. People love, I think back then Omar had less than 1,000 followers. I started out at 300 followers.
What? No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Homar's blog was created in May of 2020. So it's not even that old.
But no, his story was that he was Steve Jobs' ghost, and then somehow
I followed that account, but then it got taken away. Yeah.
Taken out. And then so he had to restart over again. But
yeah,
really,
they did have the third row.
300? How many followers you have now, sir?
I think it's like 505,000, something like that. So it's the growth is pretty crazy, and that just shows you how much the Tesla community has grown over the years. Like having 1,000 followers in the community 3 years ago was a lot, and now it's like, look how many people have 1,000 now. It's just like almost everyone, because we all follow each other. So it's pretty wild, and I still love doing it. I still love informing people the best I can. My goal is to be the best news aggregator that I can. And so people don't have to spend hours watching videos or reading blogs. They can just go to my page and just scroll my feed, and they'll be up to date on everything Tesla.
Well, that's what we all do.
And how much time per day do you spend on that? Are you constantly there, or
No, not constant, but I would say it's a full-time job's worth doing it. Like either talking, I talk to a lot of people every day, and either searching for news. I found ways to save a lot of time not having to Google or search things. I have certain feeds that I use now, which are really helpful. But yeah, no, it's definitely a full-time job, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And well, we'll get to the monetization later on, but it's remarkable, because did you consciously take a decision? Okay, I take this now on as a full-time job, because at that time there was nothing monetized about it, right?
No, I just did it as a fan. There was no expectation that anybody would make any money from doing this. I was just doing it for fun, and then Elon bought Twitter.
Tesla is a big company. I'm just going to interject. Tesla is a big company, and my guess is a lot of the employees get news from your feed before they get it, sometimes internal from the company.
It's funny you say that. There were some employees that reached out to me in recent months saying, we hear stuff about Tesla before Tesla tells us internally. They can see it from my feed, which is pretty funny.
Yeah. Or sometimes not at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But yeah, no, it's cool that a lot of the, even I love Tesla because they really interact with the community unlike any other company, big company that I've met. I think if even a few executives follow me, they interact with us.
Elon follows you.
Yeah, of course, Elon
and
as well.
Subscribes to you.
Yeah.
And so I was going to say that people, you need to subscribe. If there's only one count to subscribe to, well, two. You need to subscribe to Sawyer. He deserves it. And you need to subscribe to Alexandra for $1 a month, and she gives it all to nonprofit. She gives it to a nonprofit. But for Sawyer, you are about to get married. You have a what do you call that? A
fiance.
Fiance. It's been so decades ago.
Fiance.
Nearly wed.
No. You're a fiance. You're not married yet, right?
No, not married yet.
Okay.
I proposed three months ago.
Barbara, right? And she said, though, instead of charging $3 a month, you should be charging $10 a month. And that really is true. Your value that you provide is probably the most of anyone else. And so I highly recommend folks to subscribe to you. But you're worth $10 a month.
Well, I can't even. Yeah, Twitter actually, or X now, they don't allow you to change the pricing. So that's fine. I said it was $3 a year ago. That's fine though. They
will soon. Apparently, they announced that. But yeah, so Elon follows you, so let me backtrack a little bit back to Q3. So this is Alexandra made this tweet out, and Elon replied to it. But basically, she said in Q3 regarding this potential factory shutdowns, if you look at Elon and Zach's comments, they actually say a little bit down for a lot of factory updates, just probably a slight decrease in production in Q3, minimize idle costs, not profound reduction. So some people are very concerned about this massive reduction in production numbers. It probably be expected to be what expected, right, guys?
Yeah, I'd say so. Didn't Elon say, or I think it was Elon, that there was a possibility that production could be above what it was in Q2?
Oh.
I could be wrong, but
I think shipments can certainly be above where they were in Q2, and that would make sense given the inventory.
Yeah, I know. I expect deliveries to be higher.
The delta of deliveries and production could actually be smaller.
Yeah, that's true. I think 470 something, right around there, 480 maybe.
Oh, you're positive. 450.
450. Okay, we'll see.
Sawyer, where do you consider yourself? Are you you're definitely a Tesla bull like we are, but are you an Uber bull? We just found out that Alexandra overnight turned into a friggin' hyper bull. Just overnight.
It wasn't overnight. I just never had a 10-year model.
I think privately
I'm more
I think privately I'm more of a hyper bull, but I try not to be too hyper on Twitter because I think that's not good for people. Like I think it's good to be somewhat unbiased in some topics, but I can't hide it. Like I'm an investor. I love the company.
No, but actually it's true because I think few people know, like I didn't know that you're an all-in. You sold Apple to buy Tesla, which is my story, but I didn't know that you're all in, and I didn't know that you would consider yourself a hyperbull because you're very, very even-keeled, very realistic.
A month from now, I think it'll be 5 years since I went all in, still all in today. Yeah. Right on the roller coaster.
Herbert approves.
I approve, but see, the thing is, you didn't show any emotion during the 2022 crash. You were like nothing. You're just like news.
Early on in my Twitter account, I used to post a lot of screenshots of the stock price going up, and in early 2022, I felt that it was just detrimental to people's. It was just too much focus on short term. So I was like, I got to lead by example here and like stop talking about the stock every single day. So that's why I don't really post screenshots unless there's like certain milestones or, it hits 300. That's fine, I guess. But posting daily screenshots or like technical analysis or whatever, I just feel like people shouldn't really be focusing on that so much as, what the company's doing itself.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we actually try to stay out of that as well. I mean, there is a clientele for everything, right? There are a couple of traders among us, and I think they have their right to exist and discuss these things. But if you're not a trader, you shouldn't play trader. You see what I mean? If I'm not a trader, so why in the world would I comment on trading and on short-term movements? And just to add to what you earlier said, Herbert, nobody ever asked me to do a 10-year model until I was invited on that other channel a couple of weeks ago, and then I had to sit down. So my choice then is, and we can discuss this at another moment more in detail, do I really build a model like the institutional investors do, with then discounting it and do all those things and really start from cash flow analysis and all that? Or do I take the big lines that Elon and Drew and Zach give us, meaning how much they expect cars to sell, that at one point energy will catch up with the sales numbers of cars and then the profitability that Elon pointed out at my question when at the shareholder meeting, right? We had the 25% energy margin, we had the 20 to 25% car margin that could become 80% when we add software as a service. So when you start playing with that, and when you hear him talk about the potential of the bots, and you put the numbers to those 4 business lines and think that in 10 years we are there, well, then there's no other conclusion than getting to skyrocket numbers. And I actually think my number is still under where I could have gone if really I was in a hyper mode. And that's the thing that people often forget. They are focused on a couple of issues in the short term, but they forget the big picture. And the big picture is so convincing that if you can just hold still and if you understand that you don't need this money for quite some time yet, well, there we go. And I mean, you have to stay vigilant, and some of these scenarios may not play out. So you have to, watch the market, but just don't get too nervous for the short-term stuff.
Yeah, I think if you're wanting to be a Tesla investor, you have to have a multi-year time horizon, because otherwise it's just going to be a brutal ride for you.
You're on mute.
Oh, I said impossible. Yeah. Impossible to
Don't get me
trade. I
started.
mean, you can trade it, of course. I mean, we don't have Christian here. He would convince it that you can trade Tesla, but it's not the same attitude than if you invest in the company. If you invest in the company for the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the third topic is Uber.
Oh.
And it's a
I'm
ridiculous
so
topic,
over
but
Uber.
I need to bring it up because yesterday, in the last few days, Gary Black tweeted out. Gary is the managing director. He's a portfolio manager for the Future Fund. He's actually a CEO of massive institutional firms in the past, including Goldman Sachs. He was a CIO there. And so he was saying that Tesla should buy Uber. He created a little tweet thread, and it was just ridiculous. It was really he was contradicting himself over and over again. From my perspective, I couldn't understand it. But the reason I want to bring it up is because both Alexandra and Sawyer were a main part of that Twitter conversation that was happening. So why don't you guys tell me from your perspective what you saw? Start with you, Sawyer.
Yeah, that it just makes no sense to me. To spend upwards of, it's currently valued at roughly 95 billion, but obviously if they're going to want to be acquired, you're going to have put some sort of premium on it. So let's just slap another 20% on there. It's like 115 or so billion dollars. And, Tesla has 23 billion in cash, so the rest would probably have to be equity. And, Gary said there would be no dilution, but I just don't see how it makes any sense, because he seems to think that Tesla's brand is not strong enough, or that if they were to release their own ride-hailing network app, that it wouldn't overnight be having like millions of users. And, maybe he's right. But I don't think it's worth Tesla spending, $100 billion plus just to have, 125 million users. And another thing, all those users wouldn't be necessarily riding in Teslas overnight. Tesla would have to build out their own network of robotaxis or, ride-hailing cars. I just don't see the fit. I think a lot of investors and institutional investors would be very skeptical of the rationale behind that strategic decision. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And, I'll also add that Tesla's not the type to acquire big companies like that. They seem to like to do things in-house and see if they can achieve that. Maybe not so much with the mining stuff, but in general, they like to do that. I just don't see them spending $100 billion plus. If you thought people were mad with Elon spending $44 billion for Twitter, can you imagine Uber for 100? That'd be insane. No way.
And I have no idea. So let me just trace the little story. So Gary was at the Tesla takeover this weekend as well. So since this is in California and close to my home turf, I had discussions with him, when would he arrive? When would he arrive in San Luis Obispo and all that? So I know he has been seeing West Coast institutional investors the last couple of days prior to arriving in San Luis Obispo and afterwards. And I always have this feeling when we have Gary traveling either on the East Coast to see the Fidelities of this world or the New York people of this world, or now this time on the West Coast, he just gets these crazy ideas because these institutional people he talks to just put these seeds in his brain and then off he goes with them. So he better goes back to Chicago. Jeff, keep him there and don't let him travel too much. So that's the first point. The second point is this is, as Sawyer said, one of the least compatible ideas with Tesla. First of all, I just don't think this whole company culture is compatible, right? You have Tesla, who is so fundamental, who builds everything up, while Uber is a connecting service software. That's all it is. I know there's merit to it, but it's not even constantly profitable. It had now one profitable quarter, and I know Gary wrote the stock well and made some money on it over the last year. All good. He bought it at a very low price, and it is at the price it is now. So that aspect is something that just I couldn't see them merge. I couldn't see those cultures work together and do something profitable. And then just from the basics, Tesla doesn't need that. The three things that you can buy, or the four things that people were trying to convince me yesterday that you would buy by buying Uber was, one is the app. You got to be kidding. I mean, Elon is currently building the best app to come with X. Tesla has an app that is perfectly functional. If they want an app, they put a crew in place, and 4 weeks later they have an app. That's just it. If they want a hailing app, that's the easiest thing. The second is the customer base. I don't think there is a less loyal customer base than for ride hailing. You will take the ride hailing service that is the quickest, cheapest, and that's it. Whether the logo on the car is Tesla service or Lyft or Uber or any of those local ones, nobody cares. So you may care about the brand of the car, or you may care whether it's a driver or non-driver, but it's certainly not the label on the app or the label on the sticker of the car that's going to determine it. The third thing that they think was of use is the data that they have on who is riding from where to where. What the heck? Again, the customer is not loyal, and that data flux will come immediately as soon as new customers come in. And then the fourth point was licenses. So the people that brought up licenses told me, Uber has now all these licenses. Remember how it was difficult in New York? Remember how it was difficult in London? Yes, it was. 10, 15 years ago, it was difficult for a ride-hail service to obtain licenses. Now it's easy because now procedures are in place, and lots of small local players wanted to get into these markets as well. California, which is the worst place for any license for anything, you go on the website, you put it's TNL, the name for the special license that you need, license of all these networks. You get one license for the whole state. It's a couple of pages to fill out, and that's it. So there is this whole Uber has the licenses was certainly a major plus 15 years ago. Today, anybody can get those licenses. There's a system in place. You put your lawyers on it and you get your licenses. So the whole value of this is zero, and may even actually be a liability, because you get this whole machine with all this. Should these drivers be employees? Should they be 1099 contractors that can resurface at any point? Get out of it. Don't touch.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you both. That was good. We don't have Gary here to defend his proposal. I did interview him earlier today, like I think I said, but yeah, that's okay. Let's move on to next topic is GigaIndia. This seems to have really taken off. There is continued news. Even just yesterday, there was news that 2 Tesla executives are actually physically in India. There's news that India announced that they're allowing in Tesla to bring in some of their Chinese manufacturers, but their caveat is that they want the Chinese suppliers to be in partnership with the India suppliers. Jeff, do you want to comment what you think about GigaIndia, how real it is, and about that comment about supply chain?
Yeah, it's real. It's geopolitical. It's a big deal. BYD's out, and they'll probably resubmit and try again. But the news on BYD was they submitted as a part of a joint venture. They were going to go in. They were going to work with the India supply chain and a contract manufacturing partner in India, which from India's perspective would help with sharing information and help really allow them to have skin in the game. But India rejected that, and again, this is where the border disputes and geopolitical issues take precedence. And India's in a battle here. They understand. They see what's happened in China with them getting out way ahead on EVs and really becoming a world leader, to be honest, in terms of EV output. And then with Tesla, obviously having the technology and single, OEM, leadership and output. But BYD's right there, and there's some very strong contenders, Li Auto, NIO, and so forth, that are below them. So geopolitical issues took precedence. BYD's out, but the real good news for Tesla is Tesla's in. They've leased this office space. And to me, it's just a matter of, it's a set of stages they're going through in terms of a negotiation, both on the construction of the supply chain and the ownership of the supply chain, and then really how all the tariffs and inbound and outbound duties will work. And what's great about this is these conversations probably started a year ago. Tesla had far less leverage a couple of years ago. They've done nothing but distinguish themselves as a world leader in EV production, EV technology, EV R&D. This is what India wants. India wants a piece of this. India wants its presence, Tesla's presence in India. Tesla does not have to agree to a joint venture. We'll see what the details of the agreement are, but really I view Tesla as being in the driver's seat in this conversation. And not that India doesn't have a lot, still have a lot of leverage, obviously, but I really view Tesla as in the driver's seat because India knows they have to catch up or they've got to run a train with China.
So are you expecting GigaIndia to be announced this year?
It's possible. An announcement is one thing, the groundbreaking is another thing, and really the production schedule, the facilities, another thing. But it's quite possible. It depends, how many details are still open in the negotiation. But the fact that the two top people met, that's a very good sign because you don't really want to raise any new serious or significant issues after the two have met.
Okay. Sawyer, some inside baseball. Can you share a little bit of how you do your breaking news? Like, do you have staff that help you? Like, for example, in India's story here, do you actually have people in India letting you the little notes?
No, I don't. There are Tesla fans and community members all over the world, though, that have sometimes or insights to share. That's always really helpful. But I think Reuters shared an interesting opinion piece tomorrow, going back to what Jeff said about BYD. Tesla has had a red carpet welcome from India for its proposal to invest in the country, while its largest rival in EVs, China's BYD, has been stopped cold by increased scrutiny from New Delhi. And the result could be an opening for Tesla to negotiate terms for an entry to the world's third largest auto market without the competitive threat from BYD that it faces from other emerging markets. And of course, we had this news, I think it was yesterday, that Tesla had leased around 6,000 square foot office in India. I think it's a 5-year lease. So I think all the breadcrumbs are there I feel like we're getting closer and closer to an agreement. And I think it was 2 or 3 months ago that Elon said they would announce a new Giga location, I think by the end of this year. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something, end of Q4. We'll see.
It's happening. It's happening.
Yeah, if I'm India, I'm a little surprised I'm not surprised they rejected the BYD. I'm surprised they didn't complete the Tesla negotiation, or maybe they have, and maybe we're very close. But if I were on that side of the table, I would want to keep BYD on and Tesla on at the same time, purely for leverage. But I guess the geopolitical issues are rising well above that.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is exciting. This is there's a lot of people that are kind of split on the India market in terms of, is there, what's the auto market there? What's the affordability there? And I think it's very difficult to just go in and kind of survey and do like nominal linear surveys and think you understand the Indian market. We've seen that as well in the smartphone world as well. So I'm going to be interested to see how this market plays out. I think Tesla's building this for 2025, and they're building this for obviously entry of the Gen 3 vehicles, which should get them closer to the target.
Yeah, clearly. And solar. I think there's a lot of solar and energy projects associated with India.
I think you made a good point, Jeff, that there's a long lead time between obviously announcement and construction starting. And we've seen that with Giga Mexico, where I think it was announced in, was it March, early March? And it's already August. There was, the governor there was like, yeah, we're going to start construction in like 2 months. But here we are in August and it still hasn't started yet. And it's similar to Tesla's Giga Nevada expansion news. They had announced that in, I think it was January. And I heard from just a follower. I held a follower only or a subscriber only spaces about a week ago. And, he's tapped into the Reno area. And he said that there hasn't been any movement on the next steps for that yet. So I don't know if it's just because it's red tape or paperwork or, Tesla's wanting to take its time. I'm not sure, but these things definitely take a while.
It's like constructing a house. Always takes longer and more money than you think, right? It's just complicated, and in foreign countries even more so. Everybody wants to make it happen, but that doesn't mean it does happen. And I actually feel like Germany is still, so much red tape around it for this expansion now. It just starts all over again. And did you realize how quiet it became with all these European countries? 3-4 weeks ago, we were talking, is it Italy? Is it France? Is it Spain? Whatever. Completely died down for the moment. Let's see when that resurfaces again.
But then we agree that all those handshakes and all the world leaders that he met was more likely the megapack factories, not Giga factories. And in fact, they're going to expand Giga Berlin. And so they may not be searching for one, although that rumor about Giga Spain quickly died down because, whatever, they squashed it. But I think it's almost all megapack factories. Yeah.
It's pretty insane how much, I don't think a lot of people realize how much demand there is out there for a large energy storage project like Megapack. It's wild.
Yeah, and people don't realize how long it takes to build those factories and to make money on those factories, because the energy contracts just, don't have the same immediate cash flow results than you will have with cars, just because there is, in the contract so many different steps until you get paid and until these megapacks are on their different grids and work, then you get the last payment. So it's much more difficult for us to estimate when, that's what happened in Q2, what revenue really falls exactly when. So while energy is a very stable and good money bringer, if you have a 5 or 10 year horizon, don't bet on energy from one quarter to the next. You can be completely off.
Yeah.
Okay, I think just to clarify, the ability for Tesla to build a megapack factory is very fast. It's the size of a Target retail store. They can put it up within a year. But what you're referring to is installing megapacks in a big project that signed a contract with Tesla. That's what you're referring to.
Yes.
Okay, good. So first of all, let's move to the next topic, which is stock market. And boy, this is looking like it's going to be a boom year. Some people are now even talking about a Fed pivot this year. I want to hear your thoughts. And Apple and Amazon both gave earnings today, and it was good guidance from Amazon, and it's looking really good. So, can we do a toast for, first of all, for Sawyer for joining us? Thank you so much, and really,
cheers, guys.
You are the best in the Tesla Twitter community, X community.
Thank you.
You deserve it, man. Okay, so what do you guys think about the economy? Jeff, why don't you start us off? Because, the conversation has been they're going to keep raising. They're going to be another 0.25%. And then everybody said, no, they're going to pause now for the rest of the year. Now people are saying they might actually pivot the end of this year. Now, I just heard just one person say that recently, but what's your thinking? What will happen?
Yeah, there's some mixed signals out there with what's happening, but essentially, the ability to forecast GDP and jobs, that's been a challenge. And what's happened is GDP's held on and stayed positive, but really low growth positive for longer than people thought. Remember last year they were predicting a recession in the early to middle part of this year, and now those predictions keep getting pushed out. But if you look at the July jobs numbers will come out tomorrow. There was a preliminary release today. It's mostly in line. But if you do look at kind of the private non-farm payrolls and that trend line, it is starting to trend lower. And all it takes is a couple of months of near zero or negative, and then there's going to be a real challenge in it. But right now we're not experiencing that. And so that the Fed has gone from more of proactive and predictive and they've gone from that, there's obviously this fastest rate hikes in 40 years. I think we're at the highest nominal rates in several decades. So they've gone up pretty quickly, and now they're going into more reactionary mode. And so we'll have to see what September looks like. Obviously, we had this downgrade of the credit in the last week that took many by surprise, including Treasury and the White House. But I mean, if you look at that, even that alone, I don't understand how to make sense of that situation. You have country. I think Jamie Dimon made a great point on this yesterday. There's countries that are defended by the U.S. defense and U.S. dollars that have higher credit ratings now than the U.S. So it's a bizarre situation. But in terms of the macroeconomics, it seems like the market wanted to take a little bit of a breather, and that's what's happening. That's been happening this past week. Usually, the beginning of August can be a little bit slow seasonally, but then it kind of starts ramping up. It's also a lot of vacations this month, but usually there's a bit of a ramp up later into August, going September. Again, not financial or trading advice, but when the markets are up this much in the first half of a year, they tend to, greater than 90% of the time, they tend to also have good second halves as well. That's just how the trends have gone. There's been a couple of things that counteract that. So I think what would have to break this cycle would be some sort of surprise, some sort of failure. Would it be more bank failures? Would it be the biggest thing I think that would happen would be a credit lockup, some sort of loss of credit or liquidity. I think the Fed would step in immediately and they would cut rates. But I don't see that happening. Again, that would be a surprise. I don't know how anybody's able to predict a surprise, but I think with the current trend and the way things are going right now, I don't see a cut this year. But again, if there is a surprise, then I could see them cutting.
Yeah. So we have the AI boom that's happening. Now you've got the economy coming out and booming again, which we know that Tesla, which is a high-end purchase of a car, and then Alexandra, you were pitching and proposing that Tesla extend their finances, and you and Sawyer reported that they actually moved it to, 8 years? Can you tell me more about that? Because that's one way for people to afford a highly cost car when the interest rates are still high. But wait till the interest goes down. But then they have financing now, right? Tell us what happened.
Yeah, it's 7 years. It's 84 months, if I recall it right. Sawyer, correct me if I'm wrong.
You're correct.
But they did increase that interest rate yesterday or the day before. So it was a couple of days more favorable days now. But obviously, with the Fed raising rates, they had to adjust it again. That was actually one thing on my to-do list. I just remember I needed to check the 10Q that came out to see whether the loans they took on their own balance sheet had actually increased from last quarter. That's still on my to-do list. I'll keep you updated on that one. But to get back to the Fed, I think the Fed is really between a stone and a hard place. On one side, we all want to believe, and I'm the first one, that AI is the newest boom and the stock market can go up. On the other side, the Fed still has issues because the labor market is still very strong. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because us in California, we feel that the Bay Area has suffered a lot, but overall, retail and in many sectors, there's still hardly any unemployment. And on the other side, housing hasn't come down sufficiently yet, right? So they're trying to play this game where they try to make housing affordable again. It's not. I mean, a first-time house buyer is today in a terrible situation. Very high interest rates and prices that are still too high. And the Fed feels that's the only way they can make the market go down. Now we come into the second half of the year, which is always more difficult for real estate, and where they can, I mean, if anything moves in real estate, it's going to move the next 6 months. And I think the Fed is looking much more closely at real estate than we all want to admit. So if real estate doesn't come down significantly in major cities, and major regions, I think the Fed is actually going to keep rates higher longer than we wish for. Personally, I find they're already overdoing it now, but that's me personally. That's not their concern. I wish they would be concerned about me, but that's not what they are. What they are concerned about is affordability for houses and for other goods, and obviously bringing inflation down. That's their main goal. So watch housing. I'm watching it closely in Vegas, which I think is for the West Coast a very good indicator. A liquid market, and prices have come down. There are significant cuts happening, but I do anticipate that the next 5-6 months there's going to be even more. And if that happens, I think we're at the end of this cycle, and then we can either stabilize or even start cutting. Will it pivot before November, December? Only if there is a major need to do so. Without any external event, I don't see them just pivoting yet.
Okay. I mean, Tesla's doing incredibly well even before pivoting. I guess they weathered the storm so well, even with huge interest rates. They had to cut prices, hurt us stockholders, but it's looking like once they turn and the interest fall. And look, let's go ahead and show what Amazon numbers were. They were just amazing. So Amazon reported, and they showed that they beat across the board. Net sales 11% higher than estimated. Earnings per share 65 cents versus 35 cents. Even Amazon Web Services operating margins is 5.7 versus 3.46. Everything across the board, and I think that their guidance was also through the roof. Excited. So that's Amazon, and then this is Apple, and again they beat across the board as well. So what's going on, Jeff? Tell me. I mean, it's looking like A, this is no recession. B, people still have money, and it seems to be that the fear is gone, and they're ready to buy more.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon did beat across the board. Their after hours are way up, and almost 10%, I think, and deserve it for that quarter and the guidance. The Apple story is a little bit mixed. I haven't looked recently, but it was down a few percent. The story's a little bit mixed. iPhone came in a little bit light. iPad came in more than a little bit light. Mac, I think, beat, but I think their guidance going forward on Mac and iPad was for more declines in that. So that probably wouldn't be received well. And then I think services came in a little bit better, which is, I mean, this is now literally almost a $100 billion a year run rate business, which is what everyone's looking at. It's very high gross margin business. And so people are looking for growth in services, which is a good thing. The big thing coming up for Apple is they announced a new iPhone event, I believe, coming on 9/13, and everyone believes that will be the new iPhone 15. Again, I have no inside information on this, but there's information that says that this should be a very big upgrade versus prior years. If you looked at an iPhone 12 versus a 14, very similar devices, this is believed to be a much bigger upgrade. The question will be is, do they have the supply? And there's been lots of rumors coming out of Asia on that. So we'll see what happens there. But I think they're really looking at this iPhone upgrade cycle as, how's the rest of the year going to play out? The iPhone alone could definitely carry the company on its back. For macro, what Amazon is saying is that the consumer is strong. I think Square reported or Block reported as well, and they said they believe the consumer is strong as well. They do a tremendous amount of transactions. Square beat when they reported today as well, and they also said the read-throughs in July, which is the current quarter, are also very promising for the consumer. So what you're looking for in terms of macro from the Apple and Amazon reports, it looks like there's some relative strength. It's really going to be how well this iPhone upgrade cycle goes for Apple. But the services strength is there, and then Amazon's showing you the consumer is strong. Other companies are showing you that the consumer is relatively strong. And if we even look at auto as a macro, Ford and GM raised guidance again for the remainder of the year. So I don't know how long this pent up demand narrative is going to run for, but I don't think it should run for an entire year. That means that I believe it in the first half of the year of why GM and Ford were ahead of their prior sales guidance. But if it goes into Q3 and Q4, well, then there's definitely strength. Even for these items that have to be financed, there's still some relative strength.
Nice. Music to my ears. So, Sawyer, are you ever going to expand beyond Tesla and maybe do breaking news for Apple or Amazon or whatever your favorite company is?
I think I found my niche that I like most, and that's Tesla. And I used to be a huge Apple fanatic, and I still am to some degree. I've been reading daily Tesla or Apple rumors since I think 20 plus years, through Mac rumors and whatnot. And actually, I've actually talked to a lot of the people that work there now, which is pretty cool. But no, I'm just Tesla. That's it, man.
And
Other Elon companies.
How does the Apple community compare to the Tesla community?
The the Tesla community is sort of what the Apple community used to be like 10 plus years ago. Like, they have a lot of that energy. You have people lining up at the stores for the iPhone. A lot of that's died down now. And I think the products just aren't as exciting as they used to be. But with Tesla, it's just completely unique. It's, these products are obviously much different. But I think the energy that the community has is even unlike what I think Apple had back in the day. It's more, I think the fans are probably even more diehard than the Apple ones were back in the day, that's saying something, because the Apple fans are really diehard.
I was an Apple fan, and you were an
great.
Apple fan, and I never camped out on the stores. But I was a huge Steve Jobs, fan, because I just loved his product focus. But I never communicated with any other Apple fan. So there's something different about Tesla. And I was going to say Sawyer, but I mean, the Muskonomy is so big. You are reporting not just on Tesla EVs, you're reporting on
and growing
robots, AI. You're going to be talking about SpaceX and X, and so that is plenty.
Yeah, and at one thing, it's sometimes difficult because all of a sudden Elon's running an AI company, and then you have to learn about like AI. you have to know about all these topics you like previously had know nothing about, like engineering and AI and robotics, of course. Yeah, it is. I love it.
The fun of it, yeah. All right, well, let's talk society. In the society section, we like to talk about other topics, and so one of the big one is Twitter, which used to be called Twitter. Now it's called X. One of the things that Elon has done is allowed for creator revenue for somebody like you and Alexandra, who are pretty prolific in terms of your reach. You guys get well over 15 million. So why don't you share, if you're open to it? I know you guys are, both of you. Be transparent. Share how many millions of people you've been able to reach in the last 3 months, how much revenue you're able to get, and do you think that this can be kind of like a career for you, just this revenue alone from X?
I think it's certainly possible. I think year to date, I've done about, I think, 1 billion impressions so far on Twitter. Or X, I should say. Yeah, it's pretty wild. I think all of last year I did 1 billion, and then just so far in the first 7 months, it's been 1 billion. Yeah, so it's really ramping up. But I don't know about the last 3 months, but I have the data for the last couple months. And last month, for example, I did about just under 1,000 posts and 212 million impressions, which is about 6.8 million per day, and 1.6% engagement rate, roughly 350,000 link clicks, 108,000 retweets or reposts, they're called now, a little over 1 million likes, I think like 62,000 replies, and then I get a roughly 50,000, 60,000 profile visits per day. And I think that's a lot of Tesla people just checking what's going on all day long. And about 26,000 new followers last month, it looks like. So pretty wild.
I'm so
yeah, and I want to point out that Sawyer was really gracious, because I set up this spreadsheet where I put my numbers in, and said straight away, let me add mine, which again, just shows what a lousy beginner I am. But I mean, it's very gracious that you do that, because the one thing, I mean, I don't want to make a living off X or anything. I have a day job. I love my day job. I think I'm very useful in my day job. But what I always love, it's probably the analyst in me, I want to understand the algorithm they are using. I want to understand where their weight is, because my reach is much smaller than Sawyer's. I have about 10 million per month, while you have about, I don't know, more than 100 million, obviously per month, 120, 100, so 12 times more. You do it with a third of the number of tweets that I have, which obviously everybody will say that's typical Alexandra, right? Just blubbering our way through, which is true. But what is interesting is when I look at your measures, you should have been paid significantly more than me, yet you were paid about 3.5 times what I was paid, right? If I remember right. So that, one more pay, 2 more pays, and we'll understand where they put the weight, and they will probably move it. And
well, they put the weight on verified. It's verified users who are looking at your thing. You're almost all verified, and a lot of Sawyer's is with 500,000. What did you say? 700,000 followers.
500,000 roughly.
Yeah.
500,000 followers. Obviously, 90% of them are not verified.
Yeah, and that's a parameter we don't know, right? I mean, obviously nobody's going to count how many of our followers are verified, so that's probably the big unknown.
One thing I will say is ever since those payouts went out, I've seen a huge increase in the amount of verified people showing on my replies and just on Twitter in general. Because I think a lot of people are like, oh, wow, I can make money on this site. Let me sign up.
So it's working.
Yeah.
But not only quality.
Yeah,
Yes.
come on. Can we talk about this? Because it is getting on everybody's nerves that people are just, the quality has gone down. They're just, stupid. Do you believe in aliens? I mean, come on, stop that. It's so obvious.
I think it's
What
called
do you guys think?
engagement farming. I think it's called engagement farming. And
it's annoying. Don't you guys
at
think?
least so far with X, you're paid off based on the ads shown in your replies. So if you get more replies, you get more ad revenue. Now that'll change somewhat in the future to, you'll get ad revenue share from profile visit views and ads shown on your profile, as well as ads shown on videos. But there has been an increase in the amount of questions people are asking because people like to get responses. And that's one of the reasons I think, Alexandria, that mine wasn't as high as a lot of people think, because I'm not often asking for, questions. Sometimes I have been lately. But in general, I don't spark a lot of conversations in my tweet. I just put out the news, and then if people want to share their opinions under my replies, they can. Otherwise, I'm not really here to have like a long conversation with a lot of people under my replies. And last year, I made it a goal to decrease my tweet/post frequency count by roughly 50%. And that's what I've done. I used to do 2,000 tweets per month. Roughly now it's about 1,000 or less. I try not to tweet more than like 30 times a day because a lot of people follow me. They have my alerts on. I don't want to like annoy people with a bunch of replies that they don't really care about. So I try to, you got to have fun too, but I try to mostly stick to just news that people care about.
Very noble of you. Very noble of you. While I really engage, but I always did. We only knew about this middle of July, right? We learned around, I think, July 10th. So, and you can see in my stats, I didn't change anything since July 10th. I have the same, amount of tweets and engagements and whatever. But it is true that I respond, I engage, I cry and I laugh, right? I'm all over the place, which is how I like to do my Twitter. But the one thing that is really getting on my nerve is this engagement farming. I felt we lost a couple of people to that, that were before that just interacting with us on an intelligent basis, on a fun basis. I don't want the fun to go away, but I just feel like suddenly it feels so purpose driven. And there's so much of it. Some people, like, you have 4 tweets in the same minute. You just wonder whether they get those themes from ChatGPT, right? Are aliens real? I think that was the thing yesterday that really got me. And then 2 hours later, the same question again, because there weren't enough replies yet. So they're testing what time of the day works better and when do they... Oof. I really hope that settles down a little bit.
I think it will once the ad revenue expands to profile visits and on videos. But we've seen especially an increase in engagement from accounts that are solely set up to really create Elon related content, like whether it's just Elon quotes or it's Elon memes and praising him. I find that all a little weird. It's obviously it's cool to praise a guy that's done so much for humanity and to do that once in a while, but the constantly for engagement, that's
the problem is that he likes it. Elon likes it. He'll
like
it.
He does.
True. Then you get a like from him. Then there are 10 others doing the same. Then the whole spiral.
It's hilarious. Like I saw, obviously there's an account that tracks all of Elon's likes and everything he does. And like Elon's just liking his own tweet or like responding to his own quote from. It's just so funny.
He tends to agree with himself.
Yeah, he does.
So, first of all, I think creator revenue and be able to monetize it is very, very important. And I really appreciate that. And that's important. For somebody like you, for example, you really deserve this because you really put in the work and it's really valuable to Tesla investors. So I hope that you will make enough that this becomes a big support. And I think I'm okay to ask this question because you're transparent about it, right? How much have you made? And do you think that this will become a career now that this is happening?
So we don't have transparency on what exactly the months were that we're getting paid for. I have a suspicion that it's just February through May, but some people think it's February through the middle of July. I was paid just under $6,500 for roughly 650 million impressions. But of course, it's not based off impressions; it's based off of replies, and I think it was like 100,000 replies or something. And I actually did the math last night because I was curious. It was like 3 to 4 cents per reply if you want to break it down that way. So that's kind of interesting. But we really have no insight, as Alexandra said, that what works, what doesn't, how are we getting paid, for what. That'll all, I think, become transparent in the coming months. In terms of a full-time job, if it starts to pay like one, maybe. But I would do it anyways full-time if it wasn't paying anything, just because I like doing it.
Yeah, the same here. So I got paid 1,817 middle of July as well. So again, we don't know when that started. I started subscription end of April. I kept that data point too because maybe monetization started from the moment you started signing up for Stripe and all this. I don't know. Just wanted to keep a couple of dates up there. On my subscriber side, I'm taking only $1. So the first payout was in beginning of June for May, $70. The second payout was $240. And for the month of that will end now in a couple of days, will be about $500. All that money goes to a charity, and every month my subscribers get a proposal of 3-4 charities. It's them bringing forward what they want, and then everybody votes, and the one that wins gets the money. And so now I'm at 400. I think I'm about 475 subscribers.
So, and then Apple takes a third of that, right? Roughly.
Yeah, Apple takes a third of that, and then so that's that. And they are not very functional. Yeah.
Right now, Apple, I think, because I have around 840 subscribers, I think Apple's taking about $10,000 per year from my subscribers.
For nothing, right? I mean, this is daylight robbery.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Well, Elon said that he's negotiating with Apple. Is he negotiating for Apple for that specific thing, the subscription cut?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Yes. So hopefully he'll give it all to you, the subscriber, the creators. So you've, boy, I am sounding a little bit of a fanboy, Sawyer. So I have to calm down a little bit. But like I said, you're probably my first follow long time ago, and I do just so appreciate the value.
When did you start tweeting, Herbert? I don't remember.
Well, yeah. So that my story is I'm a product manager. I'm a startup founder. I like to look at early accounts, and I love software. So I'm like a early Twitter user. I've got one of the early accounts. I've got an early Instagram user. All that stuff. But I don't like social media. I don't do Facebook. I don't do Instagram. I just do it because I like the product and I want to explore, and I'll play around and understand how they built it and what the business model is. But I don't actually want to do it. Mm-hmm. And then I just got into it literally a year and a half ago.
Oh, wow.
And so I just, it was a Clubhouse. I know that you and your fiance met on Clubhouse, which is this group, kind of like this group app phone call, right? It's like Space. It's like the Twitter Spaces, but
yeah, it's like Spaces,
Clubhouse. Yeah. So you were there, I was there, and that's how I met everybody. And I enjoyed that, which is just joining in the conversation. And then eventually from there, start doing tweeting. And it's funny because you met your soon to be such a meet cute Tesla meet cute story. That's so cute.
Yeah, actually, so a lot of people I know met on Clubhouse. I made a lot of friends on Clubhouse too.
Right, and so did ID, and that's how we got into it, and how I met Christian and Xander, and that's why we started CyberBulls. And then just that Jeff was a regular Clubhouse too. We met him too, so that's how we became friends. But so I want to share that you obviously are now known for Twitter, but you're actually launched your company, Twin Birch. And so I mentioned earlier that few people know that you actually have a twin. So you and your twin launched this company called Twin Birch just recently. So I'm just going to scroll through here. This is sustainable clothing. So that's a T-shirt, that's a shorts. People can go to Twin Birch. Is that the only products you have, or do you have more? Oh, you got the women's collections. You have men's.
Yeah, we got women's. Got one accessory. But we launched roughly 3 months ago, so we only have roughly 5 products. But we will be launching some new ones in the coming weeks. But yeah, no, we wanted to create something, do something good for the earth in one way or another. And my twin was always interested in clothing and fashion, and I was interested in the sort of techie side of it, setting up the website, and I built that website. and set up the shipping and the returns and all that. And we've gotten great feedback so far. Typically, I was telling you, Herbert, typically that with e-commerce fashion apparel companies, you have roughly 30 to 50% return rates, and so far our return rate's been below 3%. So that's awesome. And yeah, we'll sort of see how it goes. We try really hard not to use any plastic in our products, no polyester. We only use hemp and organic cotton, and we're going to try to stick to that. Just no oil-based substances or man-made things, just natural materials if we can. And the vegetable dye that we use is just that, based on vegetables. So yeah,
very
and it's
on
all made in
brand
the
with
US.
Tesla. Yeah, very on brand with Tesla. And that's, you told me that you're in a garage because that's your headquarters.
This is where I work every day. That's where I work every day. Doing the garage startup lifestyle.
I really want you to succeed, Sawyer. That's great.
Thank you.
And then, I was asking you, is there ways that you can integrate Twin Birch with your success at, Twitter, but you weren't really planning to do that. And I'm pushing you that you really should. I mean, you should not be too concerned about, mixing your business with your service for Tesla, but that's me.
Yeah, I don't want to become like a shill of my own product. I try to promote it a little bit and get some awareness out there. I don't want to do it every day, all day, but I'll throw some tweets out there. And as far as I know, X is working on some new features that will help integrate companies, products, be able to display things, make shopping better. So I think I'll probably just implement some of those on my account, perhaps.
What about trying to negotiate and see if you can get the Tesla logo, and then you can make sustainable logo, with the Tesla logo on it. And boom.
I've considered doing sort of a contest. Whoever creates the coolest design, we'll throw it on one of our sustainable T-shirts, and we'll give you some royalties or whatever. I don't know, or one-time fee. So there are some great artists. There's some great artists in the community that I think would have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, I Am Penny and others. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, let's open it up a little bit. What kind of other conversations you guys want to have? You got Sawyer here. Come on, Jeff. What's your question for Sawyer?
Well, you took my one question, which was around the sources. So yeah, I'd have to think of another. Well, I mean, I guess how many hours a day are you doing this right now?
I typically go to bed at like 2 a.m. ish, so I just do it until then, really. For when I wake up, and obviously I do Twin Birch and some other things as well. But yeah, it's full time, and going back to the sources, what you said, I stopped leaking roughly, I think 15 months ago.
Did you get in trouble?
I used to have. No, I don't know if I want to
come
call
after
it that.
You? Tesla said, "Hey,
no, they didn't. No, they wouldn't.
Didn't they do that with Omar?
Yeah, I think that was different. I was never told like, "Hey, stop," directly. It was more just like, "What am I doing this for?" Like, I feel bad doing it. I don't like putting employees in potential jeopardy of their jobs. And at the end of the day, I can just share normal news that's already public.
Yeah,
and
wise man.
People will enjoy it just the same. And that's exactly what's happened. My account, continues to grow despite me stop leaking a year and a half ago or so. And that's what I would advise other people to do. Honestly, it's like, I don't know if the guilt will eat at them, but I felt guilty sharing leaks about a company I love so much. So, and you don't want to be in the bad side of, companies. Yeah. Obviously, Elon will interact with whoever, no matter what, sort of, but I would still.
Sorry, have you changed the way you tweet because Elon is listening to you and, you have his ear now?
At the beginning, I was like, oh God, he's like seeing all my tweets. But after a while, you just don't care. Like, and once you realize he's just following almost like so many people and subscribing to everyone, his feed is probably all a mess now anyway. So I don't really care if he doesn't like a tweet, that's fine.
Yeah, I think his tweets have a pretty wide range too. So I don't think you're going to offend anybody anytime soon.
Yeah. I wanted to ask something. You never really, did this on YouTube. You obviously had no idea that Elon would buy Twitter, but your medium was Twitter. I had a discussion with Farzad a couple of 10, 15 days ago, probably, where he explained that he's making on YouTube per impression, because that's the only thing we currently have, about 100 times more per view or whatever it is on YouTube than on Twitter. So was YouTube just never attractive for you? Was it just not the right medium, or
I think
what was?
The reason I didn't do
He's-
YouTube was I did this as a fan going in it from the beginning, not knowing or wanting to make any money from it. I think a lot of people think, why don't you do a YouTube channel? You're breaking news. It would be such a perfect fit. I think maybe I'll do that one day. But I think, Rob Maurer and Dylan Loomis with Electrify, they do great jobs already. I am thinking about launching my own newsletter. That'll be once a week. I'll just summarize all the biggest stories from the week, because a lot of people don't want to scroll through 100 plus tweets or read or watch 5 different videos of daily Tesla videos and catch up an hour's worth. So this would be just a quick recap for people.
Which I
But
think
yeah,
should actually be a feature on Twitter. I think we have now the highlights thing, which is fair enough, but I think somebody should create a sort of best of folder that people can subscribe to, maybe even monetize it, but then get only the best stuff grouped in the right
How about to
context,
launch
because
that?
that's one thing in on Twitter that's such sorry, on X, it's just such a mess, such an overload of information. And you can do it, you can curate by lists, you can curate by following, you have the For You. I actually think the For You is winning. I don't know you. Is any of you
I only
using the
use the For You. Yeah, I
Yeah,
only
me
use that.
too. I'm on the
I
For
don't.
You all the time. Yes, it's not the
I try
people
to
I
get out of
follow,
it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Really?
addictive For You.
Yeah, I think going back to what Farzad, he said he gets 100 times more earnings. The YouTube earnings are they typically range from anywhere from like $6 to $14 per 1,000 views. And especially for financial channels like Steve Mark Ryan's, who he makes a lot. I won't say how much because I think he only shares it with his subscribers.
Yeah.
But it's pretty nuts. So yeah, I think a lot of people wish they had just started on YouTube, and maybe I should have in the beginning too. But at least we're starting to get something on X now.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm about to launch that digital product. So that will be a list of all the milestones, all the key moments, all the key news that Tesla's ever had and it's about to have. And it's going to have links to URLs and articles and videos. And of course, many of them is going to be showcasing Sawyer's breaking Twitter that's or X that's have. So we're going to have everything organized. So if you're a Twitter investor or Tesla investor, this is going to be your ultimate resource and you're going to have everything in there. So I'm about to launch that shortly. But this was fun. Thank you so much, Sawyer. Appreciate you joining us in the last minute here. There was a couple topics that only you could have answered because you were deep in it. Like it seems to be, you're right in there. And imagine that you've got close to 500,000 followers on what do they call it now? Are they still calling it followers on X? Yeah, still
I think
called.
so.
He's about to change that, though, right? And then you've got creator revenue that's happening. Yeah, you got Elon following you. So you're living good life. You're about to
Yeah.
get married and you've just launched your incredible business, Twin Birch. All good stuff. Thank you so much, Sawyer. Really appreciate
Thanks
you.
for having me. And for all the smaller critters out there, I would just say, if you want to grow a following or start making, getting more impressions to qualify for the ad revenue, just try to create unique content or something that resonates with a lot of people and be consistent with it. And, don't overdo it or don't underdo it. Just try to be consistent with it every single day. I think consistency is the number one thing, and format it in a way that is easy to digest for a lot of people. What I like to do is just put as much info as I can in just the one tweet. So they don't necessarily need to click the article and leave the website. They can just get the quick digest of what's going on in the tweet or the post. So that's what I would say. Be consistent and, it'll come.
And I would like to add, find your niche, and the niche can be tiny. When I started, it was watching these ETFs. And why did I do that? Because lots of people watched the ARK funds then, but it was just all over the place. People assumed stuff, wrong stuff, right stuff. It was just all over the place. I said, no, I have to do this differently. I have to do this every day with the same information, give them the insight. All the others stopped. There's nobody talking about any of the ETFs anymore other than me. I've got my table. It's every day. I mean, it's not fun to do it every day. Every morning it takes me half an hour to make sure I have everything and do it. But it anchors you with one stable information. And you're completely right, Sawyer. The keyword is consistency. Do it over and over again. People know you. People respect you for that. Then add some other stuff. Have fun for the rest, but have one singular item out there that makes you distinguishable.
Yep.
People should follow Jeff. He is the supply chain guru. There's no one else that knows supply chain as well as him. He's, gives us so much advice, and he is a consultant. He charges big bucks for Fortune 100 companies to get half hour of his time, and we get his knowledge. And so you should follow him on Twitter at the Jeff Lutz. He is by far the best in the supply chain, inventory, manufacturing, and so forth. And I'm the milestones guy. So we all have our little niches, except for Sawyer. He controls the world, controls everything. He controls the news. Yep.
Come from the west, come from the east, and then you have it.
Okay. Thank you for joining, Sawyer. Please join us next time. And you are officially
Sawyer.
a bull, because you turned out to be a hyper bull. So we got two hyper bulls here, Alexandra and Sawyer.
I'm quite on the level of Warren.
Herbert.
I'm a rational bull, and Jeff's a rational bull.
Yeah, Herbert. I don't know. I think you need some guidance. I view you as a hyper bull.
Yeah,
I know. That's my joke, because I was the hyper bull of the four of us, and now I'm the rational bull because Alexander leapfrogged me, and then apparently
that's true.
Sawyer's a hyper bull. I thought he was like this.
Again.
I thought he was.
You're saying Alexander went off the reservation.
Yeah,
Alexander just went off the reservation.
It's because you never asked me for a 10-year horizon. That's the whole reason. You take care. Thanks a lot.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.